is the truth, the Word of God. And we looked at Pastor looked at some archaeological evidence, some historical evidence. Today we are going to look at some scientific evidence of why we believe that the Bible is true. Right. The Bible warns about, in the later days today, that there will be science falsely so-called. In other words, the Bible does not contradict science. Amen. Science in the Bible never contradicts. Amen. But there are scientists who are wrong, and that they claim that science says one thing when it does not. That is what the Bible calls science falsely so-called. It is fake science. True, observable, objective science that does not have an opinion on it, but what you can truly see and observe, that never will contradict the Bible. So we're going to look at quickly 10 things that is scientific about the Bible that proves the Bible is true because of these scientific things we find in the Bible. In other words, whoever authored the Bible, which of course is God, must have known some things about science that mankind naturally did not and could not know. Alright, so if someone says, how do you know the Bible is true? You can say, because of science. And if they say, what do you mean? You can say, well, I know that the one who wrote the Bible had scientific knowledge that did not exist in the whole world. And yet here it is, a book that is thousands of years old that has advanced scientific knowledge, advanced scientific information that the world had not discovered. It proves that the one that wrote the Bible is beyond human reason, beyond human knowledge. So let's turn to Leviticus chapter 13, verse 46. Leviticus 13:46. How many of you have ever heard of the Black Death, or the Black Plague, or the bubonic plague? It was a certain type of bacteria that was spread, and it killed about 1/3 of Europe's population. About 1/3. Okay? They believe that it was caused by miasma, or known as bad air. They thought that there was just bad air that would come in and infect a household, or infect a city, or infect an island, or a nation, just because of bad air that would blow in. They did not know about quarantine. You know what quarantine is, right? That's where if someone is sick, you would say, can you please cover your mouth when you cough or when you sneeze? Because of bacteria, because of the germs, the bacteria, that they would spread through their fluids when they cough or when they sneeze. So, also another bacteria that was very, very deadly is leprosy. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 46, it says, all the days wherein the plague, that would be leprosy, shall be in him, he shall be defiled, he is unclean. He shall dwell alone. Without the camp shall his habitation be. Millions and millions and millions of people died from the Black Death, the bubonic plague, because they were not quarantined. Because the scientists of the day said, this plague is spread through bad air. They did not know about bacteria. If they had, during the middle of the Dark Ages, the Jews were only slightly affected by the bubonic plague, the Black Death. Why? The Jewish area of a city would be spared. The rest of the city, mass casualties. What were the Jews doing differently than all of the rest of the world's population? Did the Jews know about germs? Did they know about bacteria? They did not know that. But they knew from the practices of verses like this that when there is a sickness, that person is to be declared unclean and they are to be quarantined. They are to be separated from the rest of the population. So whoever wrote the Bible understood. When Moses wrote this book of Leviticus, Moses did not know about germs. He just wrote what God told him to write because God knew about bacteria and germs. God knew about how leprosy spreads. How could, if the Bible was written by just a regular guy, okay, who is the most regular guy in this entire room? I promise you, we are all thinking of the same person. Just an average, regular Joe. Just a normal guy, easygoing, does not rock the boat, not a psychopath, so not me. Let's all say his name at once, okay? 3, 2, 1, Joel. Okay, we all said Joel. Everyone, I watched the lips, they all said Joel. If this author, if Moses was just a regular, normal guy, normal looking face, normal looking dad bod, just a normal, happy guy, how will he know about bacteria? Nobody in the whole world knew about bacteria when Moses wrote the book of Leviticus. Nobody knew about bacteria almost 2,000 years later, during the time, actually more than 2,000 years later, during the time of the Black Death, the plague. And there was Justinian's plague, there was different outbreaks. During all of the outbreaks of the Black Death, nobody knew about bacteria. But during the writing of the book of Leviticus, there was already the knowledge of quarantine to prevent the spread of bacteria disease through quarantine. How could they have known it? Well, the author of the book of Leviticus, who is God, knew it. It's proof right there. The Bible is true. Because the one who wrote the Bible has a supernatural knowledge. He knows something that mankind did not know. Let's look at another one. Job chapter 26 verse 7. Job is the oldest book. It was the very first book of the Bible that was written. You say, well, I thought Genesis was. Well, you're wrong. And Moses probably, we don't know for sure, but probably Moses got the book of Job when he was in the backside of the desert for 40 years. And probably Moses met Job, and that's where Moses got the book of Job from. We don't know, that's just a guess. We do know that Job is ancient, his writing is ancient, probably written down long before the book of Genesis was written. Okay, the Bible does not go in chronological order. So in Job chapter 26, verse number 7, it says, He stretcheth out the north, this is God doing this, He stretcheth out the north over the empty space, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. What ancient man used to believe that the earth sat upon a giant turtle, and that giant turtle was crawling throughout space. That's what the science, the fake science, falsely so-called, that's what they taught. That is the most common belief of people back in the day. But here the Bible says, well, actually, the very first book of the Bible, Job, the oldest book of the Bible, Job says, no, actually, the earth is suspended in an empty space. It has a free flow in space. That goes against what everyone knew to be true. Even Job, when he wrote the book, could not have understood this. Mankind did not know this. Yet, when God inspired Job to write this book, God says, whether you understand it or not, nobody else knows this, but this is the truth. The earth, it has a free flow in space. It's not connected by a rope or a string. It's not on the back of a turtle. It flows through what the Bible here says, the empty space. That's knowledge that man did not have But we see that now as today we know it. But they did not know it when the book of Job was written. They did not know that for thousands of years. Let's look at Leviticus chapter 15, verse 13. Leviticus chapter 15, verse 13. There was a scientist, a doctor, and he would go to the hospitals and they calculated the mortality rate, the maternal mortality rate upon childbirth. Okay, that means the rate at which a mother would die in a hospital to be 30%. So if you had a baby in the hospital after childbirth as the mother, your chance of dying would be 30%. 30% of women at this hospital, it was in Western Europe, died during childbirth if they gave birth to a baby in a hospital. How would you like those odds? I'd be fine with that because I've survived all my childbirths. But yes, females would not like that. Most of you women here would be dead. Especially for Rita, who has 8 children. Pretty much for sure she would be dead. But here in Leviticus, so this doctor saw this and he said, we're doing something wrong, guys. But the doctors were washing their hands. In between every single childbirth, the doctor would wash his hands. So this doctor, the scientist, he said, let's try something different. Let's try washing our hands in running water. Before, those doctors would get a bowl of water, and in the same bowl of water, they would wash their hands over and over in between childbirth, deliver baby, go back to that same water, wash his hands in the exact same water, and go to the next room and deliver the next baby. It was not running water. It was stagnant water. Leviticus chapter 15, verse 13 says, and when he that hath an issue is cleansed of his issue, then he shall number to himself 7 days for his cleansing, and shall wash his clothes, and bathe his flesh in running water, and shall be clean. When that doctor implemented or began telling the doctors, I want you to try washing your hands in running water, they said, that is nuts. That's crazy. What's the difference? The mortality rate went from 30% down to 2% instantly. Right, just the very next few days, the mortality rate dropped from 30% down to 2%. Just from changing from still water to running water. Well, the author of the book of Leviticus already knew that. This was not something that was discovered until, I forget the year, but something like 300 years ago. The book of Leviticus was written a whole lot longer than that. Where did the knowledge of needing to use running water, where did it come from? It came from God. Because mankind had no idea. Think of the millions and millions of lives that would have been saved if only people would have read and believed the Bible and knew their Bible. This proves that whoever wrote the Bible could not have been just an ordinary, regular man, because they knew things man did not know. Look at Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11. It says, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. They used to think that life was in your kidneys. And then today you can have a kidney transplant. You can have both kidneys completely dead and live on a dialysis machine. Life is not in your kidneys. Also, they used to think that it was in the liver. You can have a liver transplant and survive. They said, well, life must, then modern scientists said life is in the heart. When your heart stops beating, then you're dead. Okay? The Indian shoots a cowboy with a bow and arrow, and then they'll go and they'll listen for a heartbeat. If the cowboy has a heartbeat, he's alive. No heartbeat, he's dead. And then we found out, not only can you live without a heart, you can actually transplant a heart. You can take your blood, pump it to a machine, take your heart, cut it out, put a new heart in, reattach your arteries, then take that blood and pump it right through you again. Where is the life? They said, well, it must be in the brain. But you can survive with little to no brain activity and still be alive. Where is the life? It's in the blood. That's what you cannot live without. You must have the blood. The life of the flesh is in the blood. The founding father of the United States of America, his name was George Washington. And he is our Jose Rizal. Actually, he wasn't a terrorist. Jose Rizal was a terrorist. George Washington was not. Not kill women and children in their sleep. So George Washington got sick and he went to these doctors. And the doctor said, we need to remove the bad blood in your body. They said there's good blood, there's bad blood. We need to get the bad blood out of your body. And they did what's called bloodletting. That's where they take bloodsuckers, leeches, attach it all over to your body, and the bloodsuckers will suck blood out of your body. Well, if life is in the blood, and you start removing blood, what's going to happen to you as a patient? Your life is going to be removed. And those doctors killed George Washington. Just a little bit sick, probably would have been fine, but the doctor said, let's go ahead and remove, I don't know how many pints of blood it was, but it was enough to kill him, enough to kill anyone. And they killed George Washington. But had they read this verse, the life of the flesh is in the blood, George Washington would still be alive today at 400 years old. Just kidding. He would not have been killed by the doctors. Also, the information of your life is in the blood too. Let's say you have a problem with your kidneys, or your liver, or you're anemic, or if you are sick, the first thing the doctor is going to do to find out the information as to why you are sick, where is your sickness, what is causing it, what is he going to test? First thing he's going to do is order a blood test. Why? Because the information to your life is in the blood. The information in your life, it is in the blood. Even the DNA is in the cells of your blood. So, if you're going to commit a murder, do not leave don't leave your blood behind. Okay? If you get anything out of this message this morning, it's that if you commit murder, don't let your blood spill into the crime scene. Okay? That's just another tip. Again, we say that there is advanced scientific knowledge that man did not have. But as ancient as the book of Leviticus, here we already see it written in the Bible. That means for thousands of years, man ignored this. Man did not understand this, and now today, science is catching up to the Bible. But the Bible is still way ahead. Look at Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. My father would not like this because he believes that the earth is flat. My dad is a flat earther. Okay? I also have a brother who is a flat earther. They believe the earth is flat. Here in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22, it says, "It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth." For back in the time when this was written, man believed that the earth was flat. But here it says the earth is spherical, the circle. It is round. A round earth, a spherical earth, not a flat earth. Where did they know? How did they get that information? Mankind did not know it back then. But when Isaiah wrote this, he knew that the earth was a sphere. It was not flat. Let's turn to the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms, and let's turn to Psalm 8:8. Psalm 8:8. There was a scientist, his name was Matthew Maury. Matthew Maury was sitting down reading his Bible, and he read Psalm 8:8. It says, "The fowl of the air and the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passeth through the paths of the seas, And he said, huh. He said, according to the Bible, the seas, the ocean, they have paths in them. And he said, if God says it, I'm going to find it. Now this might sound a little bit crazy, but there was a problem before where ocean-going ships would actually collide in the ocean. Say a big ocean that wide, how could two boats crash? Well, because ocean currents would travel these ships right into each other. They would collide. And so he went and he looked and he found ocean currents. He found the paths of the sea. And Matthew Maury today, his writings is the foundation between the foundation still being taught at universities today. He's the one who discovered ocean currents. If you went and you told anyone back at the time when Psalm 8:8 was written, okay, this is the Psalm of David written to his chief musician, and you were to say, hey guys, did you know that in the ocean there are currents? There are paths actually in the ocean? They would have said, you are a nut. You are a lunatic. You are crazy. Scientists know that there are no ocean currents. That's what they would say. And today, if you were to say, did you know that there are ocean currents? You know what people will say? They would say, yeah, no duh. Matthew Murray discovered that 150 or 200 years ago. Science is trying to catch up with the Bible. The author of the Bible knew that there were ocean currents when all of mankind did not know it. This is another proof that the Bible must be written by a supernatural being. Someone who is supernatural. The author of the Bible is beyond the scientific knowledge of mankind. Let's turn to Job chapter 38, verse 35. Job 38:35. A few pages back from Psalm 8:8. Job 38:35. It says, canst thou send lightnings? This is God having a dialogue with Job. That they may go and say unto thee, here we are. Now here's the idea that at the speed of light, they did not know this. Today we know that light is the fastest thing in the universe. The speed of light. Nothing can go faster than the speed of light. The author knew that. He says, hey, can you make something travel at the speed of light? Can you say, tell lightnings to go and it's sent? So the Bible, the author of the Bible here, Job, knew that the speed of light was the fastest thing in the world. Romans used to believe that when you opened up your eyes had something that came out of it. And that's how you were able to see. I forget there's a word for that. Then of course, science progressed and said, well, actually no, when you open your eyes are receptors. That means there's something very fast going into your eyes. Not your eyes traveling with something coming out. Forget the word for that. But here, the author of the book of the Bible says, no, it's light that travels fast. Did you know that radio waves travels at the speed of light? That's why your Wi-Fi is instantaneous. It's instant. Why? Because it's traveling at the speed of light. And here you can see that it says, Job 38:35, it says, canst thou send lightnings that they may go and say unto thee, we are here? There's the idea there is that you can attach at the speed of light information, such as in radio waves. How fast do radio waves travel? Speed of light. And you can attach information to those waves and send it forth. And they can say, I'm over here at the speed of light. You can attach and send information. That was not discovered until just recently. And yet here it is in the most ancient of all books of the Bible. That information, that knowledge was present with the author, with God, and not with mankind. It's another proof that the Bible, scientifically, whomever wrote the Bible, which we know, of course, as believers, is God, that they had knowledge that they could not have, except for supernatural knowledge. So that limits it down to either God or aliens. Okay? Alright, Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and the host of them. This is called the first law of thermodynamics. Okay? Can anyone stand up and quote the first law of thermodynamics from 2nd grade? Boom! Matter cannot be created nor destroyed. So when God said the heavens and the earth were finished and all the hosts of them, that's it. It's done. You cannot add matter. You cannot destroy matter. You cannot create matter. Whatever matter we have now, that's it. That's what we've got. The first law of thermodynamics. And that's right there in the very first verse, in the very second chapter, of the very first book of the Bible. It's complete. It's done. You're not getting more. You're not getting less. Matter transfer from form to form, but it cannot be created or destroyed. Genesis chapter 6, verse 15. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. There was just recently, a few years ago, a South Korean shipbuilding research company that researched how to build the world-class ships. They took the dimensions, length, width, and height, and they said, how can we make the most efficient, the best ship that you can possibly build? And they looked at 10 different dimensions, 10 different types of, well, what the length is this, and the breadth this, and the height that, and this type of ship and that type. They looked at it, and guess which one they came back to? The exact same dimensions as the ark. I can't remember. I think the length is 6 times the width, and 3 times the length, and 3 times the height. Something I can't remember, but it was the exact same ship dimensions as the ark. How did Noah know that? That was not something that they could prove until just recently. There it is in the Bible, staring right at you, coming right off the page from thousands of years ago. The one that wrote the book of Genesis had a supernatural knowledge. And, as silly as this sounds, people who have read this and said, yeah, you're right. Whoever wrote this had knowledge beyond what scientists had until just recently we figured it out. Aliens. That's what they say. They say, must be aliens. It's easier for them to believe that aliens came and had this knowledge and helped to write this Bible than to believe that there is a God. They say this proves there's no God and that there are aliens. That's the foolishness of man. There is a guy, his name is Elon Musk. He's a billionaire, he's one of the most famous celebrities in the world. And he is a CEO of a company, and he says that because of our advanced knowledge of science, we can now today, he believes that we are in a computer game simulation. That's what he believes. It is easier for him to believe that we are in a computer game than for him to believe that there is a God. What does that tell you about our Sunday school lesson today? It should tell you this, that you can bring these scientific facts to any unbeliever, a lost mind, and because their condition is one that is spiritual, you are not going to convince them. Yes, sir. You can have the most obvious evidence. We just went through 9, I'm going to get to one more in just a second. You can go through the most obvious things, and there it is, black and white, there on the page, staring at them, right in front of them, and because they have a spiritual problem, they're not going to see it. They're not going to be able to understand it. Why? Because their problem is not that they don't understand reason. Why are they so unreasonable? Why is it that it's so obvious? How can't they see it? It's right here in front of their own eyes. They see it with their eyes. Having eyes to see, they see not. You can tell them. They have ears. They hear not. Why? Because their problem is that they lack faith. And that problem is not here. That problem is here. Everyone has two problems. Either it's a head problem, they lack the information, or it's a heart problem. And I'm telling you, when you talk to lost people, and you can help correct this problem here, but there's nothing you can do about it here. And people are lost and dying and they go to hell. Why? Because of this problem right here. Because the problem is in their heart. And no amount of information that you can give, no amount of proofs from archaeology, from history, from science, from literary, nothing that you can do as far as giving them information. You can sit them down and say, hey look, this is a miraculous book. This, we can prove it 10 different ways, from science to geography, to any way you want to prove it. You can study the population of humanity, and it proves out the Bible. You can look at a dog, and you can look at the dog breeds, and where they came from, and it proves the Bible. And you can show them that from in detail after detail after detail, and they are not going to believe. You could say they're created in God's image, which means they are rational, they are reasonable, they can understand reason, and yet they will not believe. Why? Because the problem is not a lack of information. Now sometimes that's our problem. We just need the information, and once we're given the information, we will be corrected. Thank you for correcting my ignorance. But the problem that you are going to face, and that I face as we do the work of an evangelist, is that you need to reach people's hearts, not their minds. People whose minds have already been reached. That means they already have the information that you have now, and that we have been getting the last few weeks in Sunday school. People with already that have that knowledge. You know what? They are still unbelievers. There are people who have read the same things from the verses that you have seen, and yet they are atheists or agnostics. Because the problem is not in their head, the problem is in their heart. Let's look at one more quick scientific proof, and then, because we have the time, just for funsies, just for fun, I went ahead and on the grab ride here, I Googled scientific biblical errors. And we're going to look at some of the fun things that atheists have said. This is how we know the Bible is wrong. The Bible is not true, because we're going to look at some of the verses just for fun. Okay? Just to show the nonsense of those who would try to attack the Bible by using science. How silly and futile it means. Though you try, as hard as you try, that's as hard as you are going to fail. Alright, let's look at real quick Job chapter 40. Job chapter 40. And here, Job chapter 40 verses 15 through the end of the chapter, God is describing a dinosaur. Alright, the greatest, the largest of all of his creations. Bigger than elephants and rhinoceroses, bigger than giraffes. The greatest animal that God created, or at least land animal, was the behemoth, verse 15. And atheists, agnostics, evolutionists, they believe that man and dinosaurs did not exist at the same time. Otherwise, their evolution, their general theory of evolution, cannot be true. But here we have in Job chapter 40, starting in verse 15, God is describing a dinosaur. Behold now behemoth, which I have made with thee, he eateth grass as an ox. So what animal is this? Is it a lion? Do lions eat grass? No, so it's a herbivore. It eats plants. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. So, could it be, some Bible commentaries say it's a hippopotamus. A hippopotamus, does it have a tail like a cedar tree, like a tree? A dinky little tiny little stuff for a tail. Not a hippopotamus. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. That means the one that made him can also make him to become extinct. What happened to this great dinosaur? It's extinct. Surely the mountains bring forth his food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and fence. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh it with his eyes. His nose pierceth through the snares. Talking about the dinosaur. I was in the airport in Chicago, and I saw the skeleton, a replica of a skeleton of this dinosaur, the largest of all animals ever created. And it reaches 3 stories into that airport in Chicago. You see it up personal. This is just a skeleton. And you look at how massive the skeleton is. Just think how, it's hard to imagine just how big this animal really truly was. And God said, I can make its sword approach unto itself. I have the power to make it to become extinct. So here we see that God is describing dinosaurs. In other words, it disproves evolution. It says, no, actually, man and dinosaurs did live together. Here is a man, Job, describing this dinosaur. Okay, so these are 10 proofs, and there's a whole lot more. I did not even get into the Sunday school lesson today from the actual Sunday school lesson material because it's just so numerous. There's so much. There's so much scientific evidence proving that the one who wrote the Bible is supernatural. The one who wrote the Bible has knowledge, has information, did not exist to mankind. It's just information that we are only now recently discovering. And yet, it's been in this book for so long. But let me just caution you with this. Don't try and use this as an evangelism tool. Don't try and say, hey, let me fix some information, some head knowledge problem that you have. When you evangelize, we go for the problem of the heart. That is that they do not believe. They do not have faith. And so what they need is to have faith. What they don't need is to say, well, according to the Bible, which is true because we can prove it by science. Now later, if you sit down in a setting with them and truly their problem is an information problem, they really just don't believe because they don't believe the Bible, then you can get into that. But I wouldn't sit down and say, hey, let me talk to you about how I know the Bible is true. Right? We know the Bible is true. Why? Because of our faith. But where does our faith come from? The Bible says, well, God gives us our faith. Yes, but God gives all men faith. So what is it about our faith that saves us and the lost person's faith that does not save them? It's because our faith is guided by a substance. What is faith? It's the evidence of things hoped for. Substance of things hoped for. Evidence of things unseen. In other words, there's a substance. There's an evidence for what we believe is true. Do lost people, do they have faith? Yes, they do. What is their faith guided by? Their faith is guided by the fact, by what they believe is that we came from monkeys. Okay? They believe in the Big Bang. No scientific evidence for it at all whatsoever. And yet they hold to it and they believe it. Our faith is guided by things that we can see. People think, well, a Christian, you just believe something that you can't see. You believe in a God that you cannot touch or taste or feel. Well, why do we believe in that God? It's because what we can't see. Paul talks about it through nature, looking at the stars, looking at nature, looking at the trees, our own conscience, written on the tables of our heart. And because of this book, the Bible, we can know that there is a God, and we can know that God loved us and saves us, and offers to us salvation because of what we can see. In other words, our faith is not blind. Our faith is guided by what we can see in science. Alright, so let's just for fun, let's look at some. I just pulled it up on Google on the way here. Matthew chapter 27, verse 35. Let's just do a few from the book of Matthew. I looked at some of these on the way here. I really didn't study them. I just kind of wrote them down real quick. Let's see. This is what the Bible, this is what unbelievers say. You can't trust the Bible because of, let's see. Genesis 27:35. And they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, they parted my garments among them, and upon my vestures did they cast lots. Okay? So, their proof is, so it's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's hard to see. Well, they read that and then they come to this conclusion. The logic they use to come to this conclusion by reading this is just such utter nonsense. It's like a child when they attack the Bible. Alright, Matthew 4:8. Let's see what this one. Matthew 4:8. Again, oh yeah, I do remember this. The devil taking them up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. Okay? Their point is this. Here it is. There is no mountain from which one can see all the kingdoms of the world. They say, therefore, the Bible is not true because there's no mountain where you can see all the kingdoms of the world. Okay? Matthew 4:8 says, the devil taketh them to an exceeding high mountain and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And they said, but you can't see every kingdom in the world from one mountain. There's no mountain where you can see all the kingdoms of the world. Okay? That's their attack for why the Bible is not true. Because there's no mountains that you can see all the kingdoms of the world. Right? Can anyone just go ahead and knock that aside? Can anyone just shoo that argument away? Okay? Alright, I'll do it. Think of this. The devil and Jesus. The devil is tempting Jesus, right? Jesus fasted 40 days in the wilderness, and then Satan tempted Jesus 3 times. This is his final, I think the pinnacle of the temple is the final one. So he goes up to an exceeding high mountain and says, Jesus, if you fall down and worship me, all the kingdoms of the world will be yours. And they say, but that means the Bible is not true because there's no mountain you can see. Well, think about this. Who is Jesus? God is God. Who is Satan? He's an angelic being. Okay? In other words, scientifically, how can they even climb that mountain? They did it instantly. Why don't they attack the fact that Jesus and Satan can disappear and reappear? That's not scientific either. Oh, you can't see all the kingdoms of the world from a high mountain. It's not scientific. Well, duh, of course. It's because it's Jesus. He is God. He's the creator. Nowhere does the Bible say that you can see all of the kingdoms of the world naturally. Everything about this story, everything in here, there's probably 30 things just there that is supernatural. That's the whole point. It's supernatural. Now, if the Bible says that Noah climbed up in a mountain and on his own, without anything supernatural, he could see all the kingdoms of the world, then yeah, the Bible's wrong. But this is Jesus and Satan that did this. In other words, the Bible is saying this is a supernatural event. It's not claiming to be a natural event. It's saying this is supernatural. And then it describes a supernatural event. And then an atheist comes by and says, oh, the Bible's not true because there's a supernatural event. But yes, atheist, the Bible says that this is a supernatural event. Okay? That's like me saying, I am wearing a necktie. And then an atheist comes by and says, you're wearing a necktie. It's like, yeah, I know. I just told you I'm wearing a necktie. I know. You're not proving anything. It's stating this is a supernatural event, and then atheist comes and says it's supernatural. We know. It just said it is. It's just, some of the nonsense is hard to even, I'm struggling to communicate to you their argument because their argument is so silly, and it's not even a child. It's not rash, just nuts. It's just nuts. Alright, Matthew 2, 16 through 18. Matthew chapter 2, 16 through 18. It says that Herod, when he saw that he was mocked, and the wise men, and was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem. Okay, this is what they say. So this is the event where Herod slew all the babies in Bethlehem. 2 years, and the area around Bethlehem. 2 years and below. Okay? They say there is no mention, no contemporary historical confirmation of this infanticide taking place. Okay, they said if something like this happened, there would be writings about it. Historical, secular writings about this great tragedy, this infanticide. If you had all these babies dying, why is it that no one wrote about it? How many babies do you think were killed in this slaughter? Not many. We're talking about a rural, not a big city, okay, a little small village area where all the babies 2 years old and below were killed. You're not talking about a lot of babies. You're talking about a very teeny tiny dot. Okay? Like, let's say that this is Herod's life. Okay? And I were to say, I'm going to remove one comma. You know what a comma is, right? I'm going to remove one comma from this book. Out of all the things that Herod did, killing a few babies in a small little rural area, no one's going to write about that. Out of all the bad things that Herod did, let's say it's this thick. And I'm going to remove one comma. Will you notice? Of course not. Of all the atrocities and the things that Herod did, this is nothing. Nothing in comparison. In other words, of course they didn't write about it. It wasn't that much. And as far as it being a big deal compared to everything else, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't that many babies. Matthew 27, 52 and 53. It says, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose, and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and went into the city and appeared unto many. It says, or the atheist says, there's no historical confirmation of anyone seeing dead bodies. It says that, let's see. It says that there's no, here it is, there's no contemporary historical confirmation of the graves opening and the dead appearing to many at the crucifixion. Okay, think about what was going on. Did it say that all dead people were seen? No. All the Old Testament, I don't have time, I'm almost out of time now. Let me just put it this way, okay? It's not that all the dead came out of the grave. It says that there were many and they were seen by them. And not for a very long period of time, maybe minutes, maybe just a few seconds, only once, and then they were gone. And who is going to write that? Who's going to take a pen and just start writing down that just a few people of dead people were seen? In other words, it's such a small number and a small minor note on top of everything else that is going on. It's natural that it's not going to be written about in public secular history. It's not going to. Why? It's too small an event. It's tiny. It's not going to happen. It's not a proof of anything. It's not a proof that the Bible is not true because some very minor event on top of all these other major events that they're not going to write about it. Of course they're not. It's so tiny, it's so small, they're not going to do it. Alright, I have one more minute. I'm going to get to one more. Matthew. Okay, it's right here. Let's see. There is no contemporary historical confirmation of darkness covering the earth at the crucifixion. Anyone tell me what's wrong with that? Okay, now it's true. If the darkness did cover for 3 hours, there was darkness. And also true, if darkness covered the whole earth for 3 hours, it would be written about in writings everywhere, all over the world. But does the Bible say that darkness covered the earth for 3 hours, or darkness covered the cross for 3 hours? Covered the cross. What happened to Christ on the cross for 3 hours was the work of the atonement. Something we don't know exactly everything that happened. Personally, I believe he suffered hell on that cross. And it was shielded with darkness. But the atheist said that the Bible says that that darkness covered the earth for 3 hours. But the Bible doesn't say that. So they're attacking an argument for what the Bible says. The problem is the Bible does not say that. So there's hundreds more that we could go through. If you just take a look at what their argument is against the Bible, scientifically it's not true, because everywhere people would be writing about darkness for 3 hours across the earth. The Bible says it wasn't the earth. They invent that the Bible says it. It's called a straw man argument. They say the Bible says this when it doesn't. And then they attack that argument. But the Bible doesn't say it. Alright? So when people come to you, and if you talk to them about the scientific proofs for why the Bible is true, and they come at you and say, well, the Bible scientifically has errors, they're going to pull up some of these ridiculous things. Just look at what the Bible actually says. And all of those nonsense arguments will very quickly go away. A quick Google search and the first list of results from your Google search, the very first page, will pretty much put away all of these silly arguments that are just nonsense. So what have we learned today? The author of the Bible is supernatural. He had a supernatural knowledge that mankind did not have. It proves that this Bible is a supernatural book. But I do warn you with some caution. People have seen it and they still don't believe. Why? Because their problem is a heart problem. Their problem is spiritual.